Hello and welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Brad and I'll be your host. For today, the comic we'll be looking at is Action Comics 979, and it is the beginning of the Revenge storyline, but technically we're continuing off right where we left in the last issue of Superman comics, Superman number 22. So just taking a quick look at the cover for this issue, at least the cover that I purchased, we can see that it has Eradicator and Cyborg Superman and Blank, and it has Mongul and it has Metallo, all on the cover. That really excites me. I love seeing that many supervillains right on the cover of the comic, and I get it that what you see on the cover didn't actually happen, but I understand where they're going with this, and it makes me really excited when I see this cover for what's going to be happening in the storyline. So right from the get-go, as far as I'm concerned, this comic doesn't disappoint, because we see Superman in Mongul's grasp. Literally, Mongul has Superman by the throat. He's beaten Superman down to the point where Mongul definitely has victory within his grasp. And not only is Mongul winning, but we see a version of Superman here that's basically begging for mercy from Mongul. And then Mongul takes a big blade and chops his head off. And he is so pleased with himself. It turns out that Mongul's actually just standing there with a black mercy plant attached to his chest, and that's his ideal fantasy, one where he completely dominates and massacres the Man of Steel. We also see at that point that the Eradicator is present and has need of him, and presumably the Eradicator sets him free. The next scene takes us to Metropolis, where Lois and Clark and their realtor are actually looking at a new apartment, because Lois and Clark and John have been living out in Hamilton County for all this time, and the commute is just getting to be too much for Lois and Clark to keep going back and forth to the Daily Planet, and so they need to move back into Metropolis and resume life as reporters as they were. Now, I really like the idea of Lois and Clark and John moving to Metropolis because, for one, John's never known city life. He's been to the city, but he's never lived in the city. And so this opens the door to a lot of really cool character developments with John living in the big, thriving city of Metropolis rather than living in the quiet, sleepy farm town of Hamilton County. After this, we see that Mongul, the Eradicator, and Blank have all ended up at Superman's old Himalayan storage/refuge house, and it's now decimated. It's literally a junkyard. And they're looking for something called the Oblivion Stone. Now, the three reluctantly work together to find this stone because it has the ability to alter any aspect of the person's life once. Of course, Mongul doesn't really play well with others, but when you read the story, you get the idea that he is reluctantly working with them because he wants something from it himself. Mongul is always thinking of himself. He is not a team player, and that's evident from square one, from the moment that we see him interacting with the Eradicator and Blank. Now, I'd quickly like to point out just now that the stone can only alter one aspect of the person. Both parts of the stone are present, and currently there is only one part that is in Superman's refuge, not both parts. Now, while digging the place out and looking for the stone, they actually run into Klon and Jitania. They're both interstellar beings that have appeared in previous Superman comics. Superman was trying to save them, keep them alive. He was helping them, and they were actually living in that particular fortress until Superman could find a way to get them home. And they couldn't actually exist out in the regular world because they couldn't exist in Earth's atmosphere. And so Superman was actually helping them and keeping them alive in the fortress, and he'd altered the atmosphere of the fortress so that they could live there. I would like to point out that I call it the Fortress in this as well because it is basically another Superman fortress. The pre-New 52 Superman, when he was retconned into the New 52 through Convergence, and then there was that other retcon where the two Supermans merged. I know there's a different explanation for that fortress now, but really that fortress came to be during the New 52, and it was the pre-New 52 Superman's version of the Fortress of Solitude. So that's why I call it the Fortress. Now for the next scene, we're actually back in Metropolis with Superman and Lois, and they're out on the street and they're kind of contemplating what their future's going to be like in Metropolis, and then Superman's startled to hear that the Himalayan refuge, the other fortress's alarm is going off again for the second time. The first time it was about a week ago, and he hears it again, he's kind of startled, and he couldn't deal with it the first time, but now he can, so he flies off out to his Himalayan refuge all the way across the planet, and we're treated to a really cool set of shots where Superman is flying over all these different areas of the planet. It's illustrating just how fast he can fly in Earth's atmosphere. Now, upon Superman's arrival to the Himalayan refuge, we actually see that Superman is for the first time now finding out that this place is completely decimated and left as rubble. Upon further investigation into the state of his Himalayan refuge's disaster, we find that A, Kelex has been decimated and he's not able to communicate very much, but a few of the words that he is able to communicate are Eradicator and Mongol, and so he's able to communicate that to Superman. We also find out that Superman finds that the Oblivion Stone is gone, at least his part of the Oblivion Stone that he was looking after. It's now missing as well. And lastly, we find out that Superman is devastated to find out that Klon and Dratanya have been killed by Mongol, the Eradicator, and Blanc. And he swears that he's going to bring to justice the people who did this, that they're going to pay for what they did. Next, we're transported to Batman's moon base, where we see Mongol, the Eradicator, and Blanc joining Metallo and Hank Henshaw. Mongol wants Henshaw to worship him and orders him to kiss his hand because, as we've said before, Mongol does not play with others. The only way Mongol is going to play with you is if you're more powerful than him, because that's the only language that this warlord understands. Turns out that Hank has other plans, and after taking his piece of the stone and reuniting it with the piece that Superman was holding on to, it is then revealed that the one thing that he wanted was to be returned to being the cyborg Superman. And thus, in DC Rebirth, we have the rebirth of the cyborg Superman, and it is glorious. Cyborg Superman then begins to rough up Mongol and kind of let him know who's boss. And he's like, hey, not only am I not insignificant, not only am I not going to worship you, but guess what? You're going to serve me. Hey, remember? That's something that you did before. You used to serve me and call me master. Well, guess what, buddy? You're going to be doing that again. Now, at this point, they actually take a small snippet to reaffirm that the events that happened after the death of Superman, where Mongol and Cyborg Superman worked together to try and conquer the planet and turn it into a war world and destroy the human race in the process, were reaffirmed due to a very small conversation between Blanc and Metallo. I really love how they honored that piece of Superman and DC Comics history. Now, the next and last scene in this comic is actually Mongol kissing Cyborg Superman's hand, as opposed to Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, kissing Mongol's hand. I think that's really funny how he made him reverse that, and he beat him into submission pretty quickly. After this, Cyborg Superman declares that the plan isn't quite ready yet. They still need to liberate one more person to help them in their plan for the destruction of Superman, and that is General Zod. And that's where it leaves us off, right there. Now, I know I usually end these videos by saying how much I love this comic and I don't give it a bad review, and it's not going to change. This is the exact same way. I really like what they're doing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, good writing is good writing, and I don't see what's happening in the Superman story as bad writing. I see the writing is good, I see them trying to honor the old while also ushering in the new, and I can't complain one little bit with what I'm seeing here. Now, if you're a Superman fan, how could you not be excited to see Metallo, Eradicator, Mongol, Cyborg Superman, Blanc, and Zod all join together to try and destroy Superman? This is gonna be frickin' awesome. Now, what makes this even more exciting is, and you can see it a mile away, that they're actually building to a Superman family / Cyborg Superman family battle. On the one side, we're going to have Superman, Supergirl, Superwoman, Super Dash Man, and Steel all fighting against the Eradicator, General Zod, Metallo, Mongol, Cyborg Superman, and Blanc. This is going to be epic. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is some of the best Superman storytelling I've seen in a really, really long time. I know in the 90s and the 80s, they did try to get into some fairly deep Superman storytelling, but a lot of the Superman aspect was lost, and sometimes there was too much Clark and Lois, and there just wasn't enough Superman. And so there have been really great Superman stories, and then there's been some that haven't been quite as good. This one seems to build off all of the really great stories, and I can't wait to see where they're going to go with it next. Honestly, I would give this comic book a straight 10 out of 10 because there's nothing about it that I don't like. I like the art, I like the pacing, I like the story. Honestly, this comic to me is a straight up 10 out of 10. And I know again that would sound like I'm just being a biased Superman fanboy, but there are times in the New 52 that I wouldn't have given those stories a 7 out of 10 or even a 6 out of 10. Some of those New 52 storylines were more like a 5 out of 10. But this one, it just seems to be hitting all the right buttons for me as a Superman fan. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this today. Thank you so much for joining me for Comic Talk. My name is Brad, I've been your host, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo!